UFC 302 is in the books. Dustin Poirier versus Islam Makhachev was an absolute war. We are here live to talk about everything that just happened right here live. We got Blake, we got Brian, and what we just witnessed for potentially Dustin Poirier's last career fight was an absolute war. He defended takedowns from one of the most prolific takedown artists in UFC history. But at the end of the day, Islam Makhachev with an insane takedown. It was an ankle pick / leg throw, able to get the darts there at the end. Dustin taps out round 5. He did not finish the story, unfortunately, unlike Cody Rhodes. But Blake, we'll get right into it, my man. What was your emotions as that fight was going through, and give me your breakdown of it?
I'll tell you what, as Brian said right when he got on, when we were behind the scenes, it was a roller coaster, man. My emotions were all over the place. I was worried every single time that Makachev had Poirier's back. He did phenomenal in his defense against Makachev when he did that. It was taxing, obviously. The first round, he had him there for almost 3 minutes, if not even longer. So I was just worried that he was going to get out of the first round because the Titan Boa type squeeze that Islam has, and the fact that he was able to defend so well, I think spoke volumes to how much training that Poirier and Matus Gamrot put into this fight camp. To train him and really just embed it into him that, hey, we have got to be good on the ground because one false move is going to be your downfall. Unfortunately, that's what we saw, but it was not in a fashion anybody expected. It was not in a fashion you normally see in the UFC. So all big caps off to Dustin Poirier because, goddamn, man, that fight was back and forth. That was the absolute most adversity I've ever seen Islam face, and there was many times where I thought he might be dwindling, and man, he might be getting tired, he might be fizzling out, and that's silly of us because why would we ever assume anybody in Khabib's camp is going to fizzle out? But it's just Dustin puts on some pressure and good times and had very, very, very high fight IQ moves. The whole fight was phenomenal, by the way. I mean, like I said, roller coaster. That's where it was. We're gonna get deeper into it, but man, that was fucking crazy.
Absolutely. And like you said, the first round with Dustin Poirier, he actually ate a really nice left hand from Islam.
Yeah.
And then he actually got taken down. And from there, Islam held his back. He had the body lock. Easy round 1 for Islam. But round 2 is really where Dustin started to turn things around. He actually defended 3 out of the 4 takedowns. And I think the last takedown was with just maybe 10 seconds left to go in the round. So he actually was showing that throughout the fight, he could defend a takedown in space. And that's what he was doing, is whenever he was in the center of the octagon, he wasn't getting taken down. It was only when he was getting up against the cage and Islam was able to change levels, maybe from a double leg to a single leg, incorporate some trips in there. That's when Islam was able to get his takedown. But, it was potentially 1-1 going into the third round. And it was actually in that third round, Dustin got his nose busted. And it was a clash of heads that did that. And initially I thought it was a punch, but it was a clash of heads that busted Dustin's nose. And then it was another punch that caught Dustin in the eye and was able to do that. And, from there, round 4 is really where it got a little more spicy because Dustin was able to keep things, or actually he got taken down, but brought things back up, caught Islam with probably the nastiest elbow of the fight, cut him wide open in the middle of the head. He was gushing blood. And entering round 5, you probably thought it was maybe 3-1 Islam, maybe potentially 2-2, on some scorecards based on damage. You could see it that way. But man, Dustin Poirier in the 5th round, you really started to feel like maybe it's his time. Maybe he's actually gonna finish the story. But man, Islam with a nasty takedown was able to get it done. Like we were talking about Darce in that 5th round. But like we said, if this is Dustin's last fight, what a way to go out. Brian, thoughts on the fight and emotional roller coaster that you went through? What was your reaction as you went through this fight?
Yeah, man, like you said, emotional roller coaster for sure. I feel like sometimes in fights, right, you tend to see a guy who, let's just say, for whatever reason, you scored it, 5 rounds to nothing for Islam, right, and prior to the finish, right? Or you go back in the record books and you look and say, well, Islam finished Dustin, right? And that, I think that can kind of trick you into thinking that, Islam dominated the fight. And, you know, even again, if you want to say that Islam was winning the whole fight, that's fine. Those were close fucking rounds. Like, Dustin was right there, man. And I think it just speaks to, despite the finish, it just speaks to how goddamn good Dustin Poirier is. You know, I don't think he needs an undisputed, you know, lightweight championship for anybody to call him one of the greats of this sport. You know, if this is it, what a hell of a way to go out. Islam is a great, obviously, and to go toe to toe with him for 5 rounds, man, like, hats off to him. I think if anything, we really, really saw how great Islam is. And I think that one of the biggest takeaways is, you know, obviously we know how good Islam is on top. We know how good his wrestling is, but his striking, man. I mean, you just look at the guys that he has been at least toe to toe with striking wise, or if not better. Dustin Poirier, Volk, Bobby Green, like that dude is a menace for that division. I don't think his next fight is going to be at welterweight, but you know, I still think he probably has that Armand fight next. But man, like, I just can't see anybody who you can't say that Islam can beat, right? Like in lightweight or obviously at welterweight. But just to go back to Dustin, man, like that dude is amazing. You know, he can beat anybody in that lightweight division. I know that we saw him, you know, lose to Gaethje, but like on any given night, man, that dude can be a champion. He just happened to run into one of the greats, and like sometimes that happens, man. But yeah, I just despite the finish, I just want people to kind of look back at this fight and really realize that we saw 2 greats who for most of that fight were going back and forth, man. So shout out Dustin, obviously Islam building on his legacy. You know, it's I think that either way we're watching history or watching 2 of the greatest to ever do it. And this was a crazy night, definitely emotionally. You know, it's one of those fights where you can just kind of see like, is Dustin gonna pull out something crazy? Is Islam gonna pull out something crazy? And I'm just super glad that we got 5 rounds of it.
And it was one of those cards, and I mean, if we're going to be honest, a lot of this card was a little lackluster, right? There was a little bit of, you know, dull moments throughout this card, but once you got to this main event, everything gave way to the emotions of this potentially being his last fight. I mean, he walked out to what everybody thought he was going to walk out to, was the Diamonds song that we expected. He put the remix on. I sent Blake a message earlier of a link to the song on YouTube, and all the comments was people with Dustin Poirier. And this is the official video of Willie Nelson, I think his name is, right? And
Willie Green. Willie Green.
Right. Wrong.
Willie Nelson is somebody totally different.
Right. Willie Green. Wrong Willie. It's almost 2:00 in the morning here on the East Coast. Willie Green with the comments of their Dustin Poirier. But, you know, for Islam Makhachev, he's potentially on the way to having the most dominant lightweight run of all time, and potentially surpassing Khabib when it comes to the resume that he's putting together at lightweight. And, you know, I see Blake shaking his head, and I don't think that you're going to say ever that Islam is the level of fighter that Khabib is, because you never saw Islam, or you never saw Khabib in the position that Islam was tonight, right? He was never really in a back and forth war with anyone, you know, and he's had that multiple times, not with just with Dustin, but also with Alex Volkanovski, right? He's had multiple wars with a couple of guys. Khabib has barely lost 1 round, right? So it's hard to argue that he's a better fighter. But as far as the potential resume that he's putting together, because Khabib retired so early, Islam has the potential to actually put together a better resume here at lightweight by the time it's said and done here. But let's get off, and I want to close out with, I want to close Dustin Poirier conversation with a memory. But I'm going to let Blake go ahead and throw some comments out real quick.
The reason I was shaking my head is not because I think it's audacious for somebody to say that Islam is on a track to be better than Khabib. I might be the one making the audacious statement that personally, right now, with the resume that he has at 25-1, this might be below, he might be 26-1 right now. I personally believe that the resume of Islam Makachev is better than Khabib's. The names he has fought, in my opinion, yes, Khabib fought Conor twice, won. Okay, that's great. Conor was on a downfall at that point. I think he was on a 3 or 4 fight losing streak at that point. I believe that Islam not only is better now, but once he retires, will 1000% be head and shoulders above Khabib. Please, somebody give me a counterpoint.
Brian.
Yeah, it's hard to argue. And I think that whole thing about Khabib retiring early is always going to be, it's him retiring early versus how dominant he was, right? Like, we've never seen Khabib in the trouble that Islam, has been in. We've never seen him in the wars, right? I don't think he's ever been cut in a fight, right? But at the same time, you look at Islam and you're like, well, you beat Charles. I know that we're talking about Arman as a contender. He beat Arman already. He's beat Volk twice. One head kick KO, right? Short notice, whatever. To KO Volk, come on, guy. Like, that's, yeah. Finish Dustin. He did that. But again, I don't know.
On the resume.
Yeah,
Bobby Green on the resume.
Islam's resume, the guys that he's beaten, that's hard to argue. I mean, I think that it's in my opinion, you just kind of stack up the competition and you say that Islam has beat better guys versus, again, Habib's dominance, just in his fights. I don't know. This is one of those things, like, I don't know who you say is better, but I think Islam at the very least is on his way to being, to having a better resume. If not, he's at least matched it, just in terms of the competition. And again, I think he probably wins his next 2-3 fights at lightweight at the least, right? And I think at that point it's kind of undeniable. But even if not, to be in the conversation with a guy who was 29-0, man, that kind of says a lot already.
Who also happens to be your coach. It's pretty cool when the teacher, when the student can become the teacher at that age. And again, I don't want to keep harping on it, but I just think that when you look at the resume of who Khabib fought, the dominance in which he did it, unmatched. You cannot take that away from him. That will forever be certified in the annals of fucking UFC history. But when you fight 18 tomato cans before you really get anybody good, and it seems like Islam came in and he's just putting on a show with no matter who they put against him. That's why I think, because his resume is already more stacked, or at least one person away from being equally stacked as Khabib's. That's why I think he will eventually be better, or if not already.
And then there's a question of, who did Khabib beat that we don't think that Islam could have beaten?
Name one.
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, I guess the comp is okay, now how do you compare? Okay, look at how did Khabib do versus Dustin versus how did Islam do versus Dustin, right?
That's
Islam
true.
faced an older Dustin Poirier.
Yeah.
And Khabib faced a younger spring chicken Dustin Poirier, and he absolutely mauled him. And Islam had a relatively hard time. So resume-wise, I agree with you, Blake. And I definitely agree. It's getting to the point, or if not already to the point, where maybe the UFC resume that Islam put on is over Khabib. But when it comes to the dominance factor, and you're just talking about straight up who is the better fighter, you have to go Khabib, right? The dude is in my opinion not the greatest of all time, but the most dominant fighter of all time. Right.
Yes, and I don't think any of us are going to disagree with you on that, John.
Right. So it's I think with that, it's going to be interesting to see what Islam does next to bolster up that resume, because I mean, if he does become a double champ, that changes the conversation a little bit, right? If he does go up to 170, whether and that would be interesting, especially if Bilal becomes champion, because now you have a guy that was trained by Khabib and trained in with Islam versus that corner there. So that would be a fun one. But Poirier potentially going out. I want to close off real quick. Favorite memory Dustin Poirier. And Blake, I'll let you start with this one. Brian, I'll let you get a little second to think about it. Favorite moment, Dustin Poirier, Blake Sneeders, say you.
I think my favorite. That's hard. Shoot. Maybe when he introduced his hot sauce. No. My favorite moment by Dustin Poirier probably had to come in the Conor McGregor fight when he just absolutely starched him against the fence, and you have the meme of him laying on the side. And then obviously Conor comes out and calls out his wife and everything. Like, I just think that moment, regardless, I mean, yes, it was a lot of Dustin. I think it was a little bit of Conor as well, but that will always be just the saltiest McGregor. And who did that? Dustin Diamond Poirier. Like, Diamond Poirier did that to McGregor, made him a salty fuck against the fence with a broken leg and a knocked out body, just beaten and battered and bruised. And Dustin did that shit, man. I think that might be my favorite memory.
Absolutely. Brian, say you.
Yeah, the Conor fight, definitely up there for me. I'm actually gonna say the last fight versus Benoit Saint-Denis. Just because that was the fight where after the first round, I was like, this is the moment where Dustin Poirier becomes a gatekeeper. This is where the younger generation comes up. They beat the older guys. And then he knocks him out, and you're like, holy shit, let's go. You know, obviously the jump at the Gillies is like, all right, yeah. But man, I feel like that was kind of one of those moments where you're like, yeah, Dustin's still that guy. So I'd probably say that.
Absolutely. Blake, I would agree with you on that one. So I'll pick a different one just to go, because my first video that I've ever done in any sports stratosphere, I had the opportunity to talk about Dustin Poirier before he fought Conor McGregor. And
Ooh.
I was actually saying that the world is going to be introduced to Dustin Poirier because they don't know who he is yet. He had just fought Dan Hooker at the time. He went through that war with Dan Hooker. So behind that Conor moment, because for me, that was almost justification. I was talking with someone else, and, I was saying it's not going to even be close. And, in all honesty, that first rematch that they had, outside of maybe a couple of punches in that first round, Dustin dominated Conor McGregor. Absolutely shit on him. Leg kicks destroyed him, put him down, made him his bitch, like Blake said, right? And that was, like you said, Blake, that was my favorite moment for Dustin Poirier as well, just because on top of seeing another star be born, because that's when the star of Dustin Poirier really was born and evolved to that next level. But outside of that, I think that Dan Hooker fight that he had was also a really, really good one, because that was an all-out war that he took with one of the most dangerous guys in the division. And Dan Hooker is no, sleeping guy, especially when it comes to striking. So Dustin Poirier versus Dan Hooker, that was a good one. Even Dustin Poirier versus Max Holloway for the interim lightweight belt, that was a really, really good fight too. A lot of people, myself included, thought Max was going to come in and actually beat Dustin, but Dustin beat the brakes off Max that first fight as well. So that was my favorite moment. Man, Dustin Poirier, if this is the career, thank you. Because from all the moments, from the never say die attitude, from inside and outside the octagon, just being a good human being, that's the type of fighter that we love to see succeed. And although he didn't get it done tonight, he is going to be beloved by UFC fans forever. He is a first ballot Hall of Famer. This is a guy that I think is the fourth or fifth most fights in the UFC, right? I mean, when it comes to or wins
30.
or finishes or something in that nature, right? But he's up there with a lot of statistics in the UFC. This man has been there for a while. So if this is it for Dustin Poirier, definitely all the best of wishes for him. And the next line for him is obviously going to be that UFC Hall of Fame jacket. But hey, maybe we see him come back. Maybe we see him versus Nate Diaz, right? Or maybe we see him in a grudge fight, or maybe Conor versus him happens a couple of years in the future, right? That fight's always going to be there as well. So Dustin's got a couple of ways to go. The bag is always going to be secured because he is the star that he is. But let's get into this co-main event because, although lackluster, I think the ending was a little bit exciting. And Sean Strickland did kind of what you thought Sean Strickland would have done if you had expected his path to victory in that way. And he walked Paulo Costa down and just made him tired, made Paulo Costa exhausted. And, and Queen Boudica Radiant saying great respect to Dustin. Loved how humble Islam was also in victory. That was very awesome to see how Islam even shouted out Dustin, calling him a champion, and saying, just being very respectful you saw the words exchanged at the weigh-ins. Obviously, if you don't know, Friday, Dustin went up to Islam. They kind of, repaired everything. They made things respectful, and it stayed that way throughout the fight. And even versus Habib, if you guys remember, Dustin was wearing Habib's shirt, and Habib was wearing Dustin's shirt after he had just choked him for the title. So mutual respect from those camps, as you see all the time. Dustin, great inside out the cage, and also Islam, right? He was kind of pinned as a villain just because we all wanted Islam or Dustin to win. But Islam is continuing to show that he's a dominant champion. He's great. Like, Queen Boudica said, humble inside or winning and always winning most of the time, right? So that was always nice to see. But Sean Strickland versus Paulo Costa. Sean Strickland just doing what he does. Front kicks, wearing Paulo Costa down, wearing him out. Very awkward boxing. Paulo Costa in the first round hit some really good leg kicks that I thought was going to affect Sean Strickland a lot more than it did. But there was a couple of them that Sean checked that actually hurt Paulo Costa visibly. And although the fight was a little bit slower per night, the fifth round really picked up at the end. Sean Strickland, whether it was a slip or if it was a clean hit, dropped Paulo Costa with a beautiful head kick. It was blocked, but Paulo still got dropped and then almost went in with a Power Ranger style jump kick to kind of end off that fifth round. But Brian, I'll let you kind of start with this fight. Sean Strickland getting the win here. Does that mean he gets potentially another title fight down the line? And just overall analysis from the victory for Sean Strickland tonight.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I mean, I think that, after that Izzy DDP fight, it's probably going to be, whoever wins that's probably going to face the winner of Whitaker. Hamza, actually, let me put an asterisk on that, because if Izzy wins and Whitaker wins, I don't know that you run that back a third time. Maybe that's when you do insert Strickland, right? I would imagine if not, Strickland maybe takes a fight in the interim. But yeah, I think that Strickland, this is one of those fights where first of all, I want to ask, why was that fight 5 rounds?
Yep.
I do not want to see that fight in 5 rounds. That should have been a 3-round fight. It would have been 5 times more exciting.
Well, if I would have taken my bet, John, you told me, hey, Strickland doesn't usually win points on a close round on 5-round fights. I was like, maybe I should choose him for decision. And John talked me out of it.
Hey, I also said Paulo Costa got big muscles and he's going to get tired. Did I not say that?
That's
you
exactly
did, and then followed it up with, don't take that bet.
Exactly. Thank you.
No, but I don't know. Like, I feel like this was a typical Sean Strickland performance, very solid defensively, fighting behind the jab, pressure, and very typical Paulo Costa performance. He got really tired, heavy leg kicks to start off, and then just kind of blew the gas tank. Which is again why I'm asking why was that 5 rounds? I don't feel like we need to see that for 5 rounds. We probably would have gotten more of a war if it was 3, but that's neither here nor there. I feel like, obviously Sean Strickland I think was the favorite going in,
by a lot,
which fair. And I still feel like in a weird way Sean Strickland is still kind of an underrated fighter. I feel like I underrate Sean Strickland despite knowing how good he is. But I feel like for me, again, we kind of know where Sean Strickland goes from here. I'm more curious as to where Paulo Costa goes, because we saw him lose to Izzy. He lost to Strickland. He lost to Victoria. He lost to Whitaker. I really don't know who the next guy that Paulo Costa fights is. I probably wouldn't even match him up with Cannonier because I think Cannonier wins. So, like, I don't know. I don't know who the next guy is. So I guess I'm going to throw that back to you guys. Like, where do you see Paulo Costa going from here?
I think that's a really good question. And I think, hilarious comment, first of all, by Queen Boudica Radiant saying, thought Sean would win, but Paulo is much more handsome. Definitely probably won't see Paulo on the cover of a Calvin Klein magazine, but Paulo Costa much more likely. Just like the guy who's going to be fighting in a couple weeks on the Conor McGregor card, Carlos Ulberg, right? Well, he did some modeling as well. He's stepping up and facing Jamal Hill, I believe, in the co-main event of that Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler card. So that should be an exciting one as well. But to your point, Brian, that's a really good question. It's interesting because Paulo Costa is one of those guys where he's almost in that Darren Till position where he's super entertaining. So he keeps himself around, but he's not necessarily winning. So it's hard to see what he does. Does the UFC cut him? I doubt it because he's so entertaining. I think PFL would just scoop him up right away and throw him in that 205 division. And he potentially, with them incentivizing finishes, could go win $1 million over there, right? I mean, they got not necessarily the deepest 205 division, although Vadim Nemkov for the Bellator champion is very good, right? But it would be interesting with that. But Blake, what do you think about that? What do you think is next for Paulo Costa?
So I actually love that Brian brought this up because this was the exact debacle I was trying to figure out right before we got on the stream. I was like, all right, well, here, let me play the math real quick because I know Cannonier's coming up. I know Whitaker's coming up. Is he? And I'm like, okay, well, if Cannonier wins, he can't go down. If Robert Whitaker wins, but if he loses, then I was trying to do this whole mental gymnastics to see because Chimaev's coming up, obviously, versus Whitaker. And I'm like, where does Paulo Costa land? So obviously he just jumped up 6 spots to fight Sean Strickland, right? He didn't get the win. I didn't think it was an impressive loss either. Like there was nothing that Costa did. There was a lot of things I thought that he didn't do way more than things that I thought he did well. I thought that there was, and his corner was trying to push him. Don't let Sean back you down. You're strong enough to stand and swang and bang in the middle. Because that's what's going to play to your strength, especially if you do it in round 1, 2, and 3, not in round 4 and 5. Now he was getting gassed for sure in round 3 and 4 by far, in round 2 and 3. In 3 and 4, it actually looked like he picked it up a little bit better and started to land a couple things before Strickland really poured it on in that last 20 seconds and was able to get the knockdown on even though it was a block. That's still a man kicking you in the head, and yeah, you can put a hand up, but that's still going to hurt. So I thought it was very weird. What I think should happen is, okay, if you want to keep Paulo Costa relevant, if Khamzat Chimaev beats Robert Whitaker, then Robert Whitaker has officially entered, if he has not already, kind of that gatekeeper status. He's still a very entertaining fight. He's a big name. Do you let Costa fight Robert Whitaker? Okay, if Khamzat Chimaev loses, who's below Paulo Acosta? Well, Khamzat Chimaev. And yeah, he lost to a number 3, but can he beat a number 7? So, okay, do you give Khamzat Chimaev Paulo Costa and let Khamzat, in my opinion, run through Costa, which I think probably will happen? He'll just go straight ground game on Costa because then he jumps up to the automatic 7 spot after losing to a 3 spot. So that could be very interesting. Or if you really want to go the full swing of positions, he just fought a number 1, didn't look super impressive. Do you go down and drop him down to a guy who's been very exciting to me and 2 guys who have great fan draws in Chao Barrio?
That's
like
what I was thinking.
really, that's what you were thinking? Because I don't know, but I think any of those those playouts could be good for Paulo, but I think it's tough.
Yeah, I think Baralho is the greatest, is not the greatest, but it is a good fit when it comes to that one because, I think you have a guy that's really coming up into his own in this division. And for Paulo Costa, we were talking about the term gatekeeper, and it's hilarious that Kevin Holland called himself the greatest gatekeeper in UFC history. So, just shout out to Kevin Holland for that. And we'll get into that amazing victory.
Yeah.
I think Cal Baralho is the fit for him because, I think you want to see him versus, someone that also has, it's almost like that new next generation Paulo Costa, right? He's that Paulo Costa evolved in a way. Now, he doesn't necessarily have that same power, but the threat to finish with the submissions and just how good he is, I think this guy could be legit with that one. So I think that's a good fit with this one. So with that one, let's get into this, third fight. Kevin Holland, like we were talking about, absolutely got dropped by a left hand, I believe it was. And that Travis Lutter, BJJ, served him well because from his back, he got that armbar, got it done. And his opponent didn't really tap necessarily. What he did, he broke or dislocated his opponent's arm, which was absolutely nasty by Kevin Holland because it seemed like he didn't necessarily want to at first. He was looking for the tap, and then he was like, well, fuck it. If you're not going to tap, I'm going to have to snap it. And that's what he goes and he kind of puts that extra crank on that arm. His opponent was still contesting the finish at the end. But Kevin Holland, man, shout out to him. Stepping up again to 185, by the way, right? So he's bouncing again from weight class to weight class, but getting it done Absolutely amazing performance with that one. Blake, thoughts on Kevin Holland with that just insane. It was just a flash in a pan victory because he gets knocked down, then he wins by submission. Thoughts on the fight?
I thought the fight was great, and I love watching Kevin Holland because you just never know what the hell he's gonna do. He's great on the mic. I was actually hoping he'd be a little extra tonight, and he was a little bit more tame, Kevin Holland. And I was like, okay, does that show some maturity on Kevin Holland's part? I love it. He obviously got dropped, and then old boy just kept his arm in there way too long, like way too long. Like he dangled it like a bait on a hook for Kevin, thinking that Kevin isn't able to submit somebody, which I thought was a little weird, but maybe that's just a lack of skill, a lack of IQ, or maybe an overestimation on his part. But I thought Kevin Holland did great. He was given an opportunity. I thought it was hilarious because he had, correct me on the name again, Jacek? Ola Jacek, not Joanna Jacek, Ola Jacek. I thought Ola Jacek, or I thought it was funny because Kevin Holland was looking up at Herb Dean, like talking to Herb Dean, going, "Dude, I'm about to do this thing. Like, you should probably stop it. He's not gonna tap himself. So you better just stop it." He goes, "No, you're not gonna stop it? Okay, then yomp." And then, I don't know if it was a break. I don't know if it was a dislocation. I definitely saw the whiteness of an elbow bone somewhere. So I think it was probably a break. That's just highly speculative of me, but Kevin did what he should have done. I mean, at that point, old boy's not going to tap. Yola Jacek's not going to tap. Do it. I mean, why not? You're putting yourself in a bad position. The refs and the coach's job is supposed to protect fighters from themselves at the end of the day as well. And I thought Herb was very smart to step in after we saw that. And even though it looked like Ola Jacek he did like a half tap. I couldn't tell if he was trying to tap or position his hand to move off, because then he immediately threw up the protest. And I thought that was weird because I'm like, well, if your shit's broken, boy, you're not going to fight much more. The ref's got to stop in and protect you. And he clearly knew it was broken because he didn't move that shit the entire post-fight interview or after the fight. So I thought it was a little odd, but like Kevin Holland did exactly what he was supposed to do in that. And he even gave him extra time. That's what I thought was so weird. He actively didn't want to break it.
Yeah, he was trying literally to be a good human being. Kevin Holland, like if you guys don't know, superhero Kevin Holland, this guy has stopped someone on the street from stealing someone's purse or some shit like that and held him down for the police. Like Kevin Holland is a real life superhero. And I mean, inside the cage, trying to not snap his opponent's arm. And, like Queen Boudica said, that insane pain threshold by Michael Ola Jacek, absolutely wild for him to do that because
Yeah.
I don't know, but for me, if my arm is in that position, I mean, you try to tap before you risk permanent damage. But Michael Ola Jacek didn't even care, even after his arm was broken. It was almost like that Jamal Hill break against, I think it was Paul Craig, where he's just snapped his arm, right? So, excellent fight by Kevin Holland. Now, what do you see from Kevin Holland from here, Brian? Do you think he is legitimately the best gatekeeper in the UFC? Do you want to see him with an exciting fight, maybe against a Michel Pereira or maybe, against a Vicente Luque? Like, or who do you just see him up against that would be maybe fun? And do you think he is, in that case, the legitimate best gatekeeper in the UFC?
First thing I want to say is people from the Baltic countries are fucking crazy. Like, all those are insane. So it makes sense that you wouldn't tap to somebody breaking your arm and then protesting after, saying like, "Nah, man, I'm still good. I got 2 legs and another arm. I can still fight." But the thing about who's next for Kevin Holland is the thing. Like, what I would say is whoever is available. Whoever's available in 2 weeks, Kevin Holland will fight them. Like, he's one of those weird guys where like it doesn't matter who makes sense. Kevin Holland, like, I'm sure that he would love to win a championship at some point. He doesn't give a fuck about any of that. He's trying to make his money. He's trying to punch some people in the face. He's trying to get the fuck out of there. Like, he is he's like, at least, you know what? Like, he's top 3 most entertaining UFC fighters for me personally, just because I love to see him fight. I love to see him on the mic before and after fights. Like that dude is a gangster, full stop. So I'd be cool with the Vicente Luque fight. I'd be cool with the Michael Pietro fight. I know that he was supposed to fight Nick Diaz, apparently. Not super sure about that. But anybody else, like, man, I listen, he can move up to, he can stay at middleweight and fight Izzy. And I think Izzy would dominate him, but I still want to see it just because, like, I would love that press conference and I'd love the 1 or 2 rounds where they're just striking. I know neither of them shooting a takedown. I know that Kevin Holland could get Izzy down and he would let him back up and say, let's scrap. Like, that dude, man, like, shout out Kevin Holland. Like, fun fighter. Like I said, just to go back to the original point, I don't know who's next. Whoever's available, let's go.
You want to know? You want to know who I would love to see him against? And I believe they've got a fight coming up, but I would love to see him go back down to welterweight and fight Michael Venom Page. I think that'd be a killer. I'm sorry?
They just fought.
Yeah, totally. I knew that. Fuck, really?
Yeah, he just got wiped by MVP. It wasn't really necessarily like a crazy banger of a fight. MVP
Wait,
was
what
doing
card
really
was it on?
This was on 300, I believe, or 299.
Oh,
No, this was 299. This was in Miami. I think this was the last Poirier card.
You know what? Scrap everything I said. I'm an idiot.
Yeah,
my bad.
But yeah, I mean, that's a. I mean, you're gonna see MVP versus Ian Machado Gary later this month as well against you know, and which is going to be a fun card. I think he wipes Gary, you know, if I'm being honest. But we could see Gary, you know, because MVP is a little bit older now, right? He's coming in kind of like Michael Chandler did after this Bellator run, a little late into his career. So maybe we don't see the MVP that we know in the prime, but still it's going to be fun. And I think, Brian, to your point, and this is a great point right here too, right? Everyone loves fighters who just care about fighting, and that's Kevin Holland, right? That's one of these guys who he just wants to get in the cage. He just wants to fight, have some fun, maybe win, maybe lose. The dude took Khamzat Chimaev short notice. He does not give a fuck. Yeah, he's one of those guys that will do it regardless because he's going to get paid to do so. And at the end of the day, for him, it's the best job that he can do to right now is to get paid just fighting people. So I think for Kevin Holland, whether it's title shot, whether it's gatekeeper, people are going to want to see Kevin Holland, and I agree with you, Brian. He's one of the most exciting people in the UFC today, that regardless of who he's fighting, you want to see him fight and you want to see him talk as well. So I think that's a great point there. So we got a couple more fights on this card, not as exciting as these main 3 events, but I think we'll break down them a little bit. So Nico Price versus Alex Morono. Alex Morono, absolutely gassed in this fight, taking this fight, I do believe, on a little bit of short notice, but absolutely gassed. And Nico actually unable to finish him, which kind of was to my dismay a little bit. I think that he should have been able to finish a super gassed fighter. Brian, thoughts on the Alex Morono versus Nico Price fight if you caught that one?
Yeah, my thought is Alex Morono. So what was I know he took this fight on short notice. What was the notice?
I think 2 weeks, 10 days or 2 weeks, I want to say.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say you probably shouldn't be gassed after a 3-round fight. Yeah, they fought before. Yeah, this is a rematch too, I believe.
Yeah, this is a rematch. He got knocked out by Nico Price the first time, I believe.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's hard to take a whole lot from a guy who apparently wasn't super well conditioned for this fight. Shout out to Nico Price. I don't know. Again, like I don't think I've seen Nico Price fight super recently. But I will say, I think that again, like you take a fight on 10 days notice or 2 weeks, and you know, you're probably gonna get your ass kicked. So I guess that's what happened. This again, this was kind of one of those fights where you're like, maybe not a main card fight, but you know, it was fun until it was a fun placeholder until we saw Kevin Holland scrap.
Yeah, it was right. Exactly. It was a fun little placeholder in that meantime. Main card opener was a little more fun. Randy Brown actually just continuing to show his way. I mean, this is a guy that has been around in the UFC for a good while now, right? I think we've seen him kind of grow up in the UFC, start to find his way. He obviously had his ranked opportunity and came up a little short in that one, but continuing to show growth in this fight. And I think tonight just continue to show what the best version of Randy Brown could potentially look like, right? What got, even though he didn't get the takedowns off his back, 2 submission attempts, right? He was working off the ground, doing some things there. Blake, what did you like about what you saw from Randy Brown tonight?
What I liked from Randy Brown was the fight, the heart. He had that I'm not fucking quitting attitude, because Dos Santos, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I know he had him in one nasty guillotine that Randy was able to somehow maneuver his way out of and actually end up getting top position. But I believe he got him in a second one later in the fight where it wasn't quite as long. It wasn't quite as impressive as the first one, but it was still one of those where you're like, damn, Randy Brown is not going down, man. Like he came to fight, and he not only came to fight, he came to win. And just the perseverance that I saw from Randy Brown shows, I think, again, talked about it earlier, excuse me, the maturity as well as the confidence and calmness to stay alert in that position and able to maneuver out of it, knowing he was very close to the edge of danger.
Yeah, very smart fight from Randy Brown, and yeah, just excellent win by him as well. So Brian, any thoughts on the Randy Brown fight that you maybe want to add?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm a fan of very pretty striking. I forgot who said it, but someone said that black people like to fight pretty. I saw that a lot from Randy Brown, but also, yeah, like Blake mentioned, the composure, the maturity on the ground when you are put in a really, really bad position, to not freak out, obviously not tap, to kind of just keep your head, say like, okay, let me work my way out of this. That is obviously tonight, but going forward, that's huge to know that you can get put in a bad position by someone who's a very, very good grappler and say like, hey, I can get out of this. I can survive. I could potentially reverse the position. Fucking insane. That second round, I was like, there's no goddamn way. But no, I think Randy Brown looked great. And I think Joe said it on the podcast, on the broadcast. Randy Brown's improved, and you love to see that. You love to see the evolution of a fighter. So I'm excited. After a performance like that tonight, I'm like, okay, let's see. And I know that he called out Neil Magny for his next fight.
Jeff Neal.
Yeah,
the other Neil.
I think he probably wins that, right? So I'm really excited to see Randy Brown come out and fight next. Shout out Rude Boy. I don't think I said it like a Jamaican says it, whatever Caribbean country he's from, but Rude Boy. But yeah, no, you look great tonight. So yeah, that's love to see the growth. And hopefully he gets that fight with Jeff Neal.
Yeah, always love to see someone repping the Caribbean, of course, so I love to see that. And Queen Boudica saying, how did he win? Just excellent, like Brian was saying, the striking was pretty, doing it, striking at all 3 levels, right? Low kicks, good body kicks, really good boxing, crisp, staying at the outside, got caught up in that submission. But outside of that, for the most part, he fought a very clean fight. Just on the striking too, just seeing in the numbers now, which I didn't even realize, 67-25 edge when it comes to the striking as well. So just piecing up his opponent on the feet, who is very much more so a ground fighter, looking to engage and try to get that to happen. But Randy Brown, just really good job of trying to, being able to keep the fight standing for as long as it is. So main prelim fight that I want to talk about, because he is a friend of the show, Mr. Grant Dawson, picking up a dominant victory against Joe Solecki, and which was coming back to graces, right, for Grant Dawson. He got caught against Bobby Green, and it almost was like, from here you kind of have to reset in a way. And Grant Dawson came out tonight and he was very dominant, and he showed that even off a loss, like coming in, he's able to just maintain that top pressure. I think Joe Solecki really did a good job of trying to mitigate the damage that Grant could do on top. Now, granted, with that, it's hard because with higher levels, you have a lot more neutralization going on. So, of course, you do want to see some more ground and pound from the top from Grant Dawson. But I think overall, just the dominance, being able to go and use the path to victory that was given to you, or that was the best path to victory. I think he did an excellent job of that. And, for him, hopefully he's going to be able to rework himself into the rankings for that one. Brian, thoughts on Grant Dawson picking up that dub?
Yeah, I only saw part of the fight, but I did hear. I didn't see the decision. I know that Grant Dawson, when I was able to watch, he was pretty much controlling the fight, like you mentioned from top. But one of the judges had it for the other way. For
No, it was just it was 30-27, 30-27, and 29-28. So
okay,
one
okay,
judge gave the other fighter one round.
okay, fair enough, fair enough. Yeah, no, but when I did see, like, it was a very dominant performance. What did I think? Joe Selecki was cut in the second round, I believe, or first round. He got busted open.
It was the first round, I do believe. It was it was an elbow in the first round off of Selecki's back
Okay, yeah,
that cut Grant open.
yeah. Like I said, didn't catch the full fight, but it was dominant performance from what I did see. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that shows the power of wrestling in the fact that, and we talked about it before, but if you can control a guy, and you, it's the key to winning, a fight, right? Is when a guy can't get up off his back, you're kind of fucked there. So hopefully Joe Selecki, hopefully Joe Selecki goes back and he kind of learns to work off his back, because every bit of the fight that I saw, Grant was pretty much dominating from top position. But yeah, dominant performance. So shout out to Grant. I didn't know he was a friend of the show, but I mean, double shout out. Yes, okay, all right.
Big friend of the show, Mrs. L. Dawson, does a lot of work with us here as well. So shout out to the wonderful Miss L, and then everybody at the crew. Shout out to Dave. Shout out to Maddie. Shout out to all of them, and also shout out to Ross. I know he picked up the win in Karate Combat, and then he retired. So shout out to him as well for picking up that massive W in the Karate Combat pit over there as well. And happy retirement to you on that one. Blake, thoughts on the Grant Dawson W tonight?
Obviously, as you know, anytime Grant's on the card, I am locked in, because I go back. I knew Grant when he trained here in Kansas City. I knew Elle when she trained here in Kansas City. So I've got a local connection here, hometown connection with those two. And Grant's been a guy that I've kept my eye on for a while, because you have these athletes that sometimes can make their not only crowd favorites, but they'll make a real fast rise to stardom. And Grant's story is very different. Grant has been one of these guys that has really grinded very hard day in, day out, fight after fight after fight, to compose the record that he's got, as well as to continuously move up the ladder. And one of the things that Grant does best, that I feel, yes, he had that loss to Bobby Green, but that was the best opponent he's ever fought up until then. And he is still learning, but Grant is so good at taking things from fight to fight, little things that he maybe messed up on the fight or didn't do quite as well as he would have expected in the fight before. He fixes that the very next fight. And he's also one of these guys that once he sees a key to victory, he doesn't deviate from the game plan. He's a very high IQ fighter in that aspect of, I don't deviate from the game plan. I found a weakness. I'm going to hammer this. It doesn't matter if it's not going to be maybe the most spectacular fight. It doesn't matter if it goes against what maybe I originally thought I was going to do. He's very good at adjusting on the fly, and Grant's wrestling is very good. He is a very good wrestler. Yeah, he's got power in his hands. I mean, he knocks motherfuckers out when he can. But one thing he saw against Joe Selecki was, I'm going to beat you on the ground. And I know that Cormier and Rogan were talking about it. So I'd love to see the stat, because I don't actually know. But he had over, if I'm correct, John, it was a 3-round fight. He had over 12 minutes of ground control time in a 15-minute fight, and it might have been even higher than that.
15 minutes of
roughly 13 time. What was the record? Because they were saying he was close to the record. So I know he was at least sniffing records there with how much he was just absolutely controlling that entire fight. And yeah, again, a lot of people can look at that and say, well, that's not the most impressive fight. Doesn't matter. You're there. You're dominating another grown-ass man on the ground in your attempts to win the game, win the match. I don't care if it's not spectacular. I care that you found a game plan, you utilized you exposed a weakness, and you utilized all of your skill against that to supplant yourself as the victor, which is awesome. And I believe he's now 20. What's his record? He's 20 and 20, 22 and 2, 21 and 2. I mean, that's a
Yeah,
great
21
record.
and 2.
21 and 2. That's a fantastic record. Like Grant, the sky is the limit for him, but he hasn't done it the way other guys have done it. He's done it meticulously, he's done it slowly, and he's ground his way through the charts. And I can't wait to see what the sky holds for him, because literally sky's the limit, or as Michael Jordan likes to say, the roof is the ceiling.
And the roof, and yeah, I mean, 12 UFC fights, like you said, he's one of those guys that using is kind of like a slow grind, right? He's
Yes.
always kind of worked his way up meticulously, growing from fight to fight, but just continuously getting better, right? So shout out to Grant, like you said, friend of the show. This is the way, my friend, right? This is the way. So he was able to get the job done. Shout out to him. Let's play our favorite. Oh, also shout out to Jailton Almeida as well, getting the win over Alexander Romanov. That was cool. It was almost like a smaller guy versus a bigger guy, getting that trip, getting the rear naked choke, made it look very easy. So Jailton Almeida coming off after a loss, super emotional getting the win tonight. Shout out to him as well. But yes, the bonus tonight, guys. We only have 2 bonuses to give out. We have one fight of the night, and then we have a one performance of the award. And I think, honestly, it is very simple when it comes to the fight of the night and when it comes to the performance bonus award. But, yeah, Blake, give me your 2 picks, my man.
All right. Well, if it's very simple, there's only 2 of them. I'm going to go fight of the night, Islam versus Dustin Poirier. I thought that was probably the most intense fight of the night, and the most on the line, obviously, with the belt on the line, and Poirier possibly being up for retirement at the end. I thought that was the fight of the night. And then performance of the night, that one's a little more I guess I'd have to go ahead, because there was a lot of decisions. I guess I'd have to go ahead and give it to Kevin Holland for getting the kind of I guess it was you can consider it a comeback. I mean, he got starched and then was able to get the broken arm submission. So I'm going to go ahead and give it to Kevin Holland and Dustin Poirier and Makachev.
Brian, how you feeling?
Yeah, you know what? Okay, so fight of the night, definitely, Islam Poirier. Performance of the night, honestly, I would probably guess it's going to be Islam or Kevin Holland, but fuck that. We're going to go with my guy, Jake Matthews. Listen, my argument is, you make a fight dirty, you get cut, you get beat up, and you go gremlin mode, and you get a decision victory. That's my guy. That's my performance. I don't care if you don't get the finish. You just kind of grit and grind your way to a decision. You man up, you nut up, and you win. You get the W. Yeah. Performance of the night, Jake Matthews.
So you guys might be a little surprised. Fight of the night, Alex Morono versus Nico Price.
What?
Really?
No, I'm just totally messing with you guys.
Fuck
Absolutely.
You,
Dustin Poirier versus Islam Makhachev was fight of the night. They also give it a performance award as well. So 2 awards for that main event, and then performance award. Jake Matthews, unfortunately, Brian did not get it. It was Kevin Holland. Kevin,
this is bullshit.
I'm on your team, Brian. I'm on your team, man. Give it to the Celtic boy himself, Jake Matthews.
Thank you.
Hey, shout out Jake Matthews, though. That man is definitely one of the people that is under the radar for a long time. He's been a UFC vet for a while, getting the win against local guy from Orlando here at Phil Rowe. So was definitely pulling for Phil on that one. But shout out to Jake Matthews for getting it done as we lose Blake. But outside of that, pretty solid card overall. So give us a grade, Brian, 1 to 10. Right, for tonight's card. If you didn't get to catch the prelims, it's cool if you just want to go main card only, but give us a scale 1 to 10. How do you rank tonight's pay-per-view?
I don't want to be. I'll give it like a solid 7. I'll give it a 7. I'm a finished guy. I think there were some good fights on this card. A 7. It was all right.
Blake, 1 to 10. What do you rate this card?
I'm kind of in Brian's area. I think I'm gonna give it like I grade on a point scale, so like 7.1. I think it probably would have been lower had it not been for Kevin Holland, doing what he did. You don't get to see broken bones a whole lot, other than noses, obviously. But I think an armbar break is always something you unfortunately enjoy as a spectator of the sport. It's like, holy fucking shit, did that just fucking happen? Oh my god. So from that aspect, obviously I don't want any harm to ever come to anybody, but that was okay, that's crazy. You don't get to see that a lot. So that was kind of a wow factor. And then 7.1 because the fight between Islam and Dustin was that good. I think those two fights alone elevated this entire card. Without those two fights, this would have been like a 5-7 maybe.
Yeah. And Queen Boudica is saying she's giving it an 8, which is pretty solid. I'm gonna go a little bit lower than you guys. I'm gonna go with a 6.9.
Okay.
With this one, I do think, outside of two or three, what's it called? Prelim fights. I thought the prelims were a little lackluster tonight. I do feel like some of the prelims fight weren't as, spectacular as we've seen. And granted, 2 fight cards ago, we were looking at 300 and starting the fight card with Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt, right? So we're not grading on that one. But I think outside of maybe the top 3 fights or, with that one, it was a little bit more harder. Granted, I did want to see Cesar Almeida win too, so that kind of hurt my feelings. She's saying boo in the comments. Hey, I appreciate it. We have different opinions here, but I appreciate you giving the boo regardless. Hey, they got the higher scores from Brian and Blake, so those are guys giving you that. But I think if Dustin would have won, this would have bumped up probably to like an 8 or a 9 for me. Probably a 10. If Dustin would have won, this card would have been a 10. But the main event was probably like a top 5, top 7 fight of the year so far.
Yes.
Honestly, I think it was an absolute banger of a fight. Sean Strickland versus Paulo Costa really didn't do it for me.
No.
I feel like that fight was a little bit slower on the end.
Don't get me wrong. Sean said that. Sean said it. He said that fight fucking sucked. It was boring.
Yeah, so that fight didn't do it for me. Kevin Holland's performance was amazing. Nico Price versus Alex Morono was a little bit of a tougher watch too. You want to see a guy that's absolutely gassed. You got to be able to finish him there, especially, with that one. And then, Randy Brown, great performance as well.
Good fight.
Didn't get the finish though, you know what I mean? So maybe that would have bumped it up a little more. So I'm feeling the 6.9 tonight, with that one.
It's a very fair score.
A little bit solid with that one. Like I said, Eileen Perez, shout out to her, made the car a little bit better too. But, that's not here nor there when it comes to that side of things. Now, that's it, guys. We're done. Next card we got coming up, we're actually going to have a couple cards this month because, we got Connor coming up at the end of the month. But even before that, I think the Saudi card is going to be Rob Whittaker versus Hamzat Chimaev. Yeah, you got Sergey Pavlovic versus that. You got Kevin Gastelum on that card as well. Johnny Walker's on that card. It's going to be a very fun card when it comes to that what's it called? Whittaker versus Chimaev fight. So we got a couple of really good fights. Brian, final thoughts, my man?
Listen, might not have been the greatest card ever, but that main event was definitely great. And there were some gems, strewn amongst this card. So still a fun night. I thought that, we all had a good time watching. This wasn't a flop. I'm chilling. I'm not like at a 10 excited level right now, but I'm chilling. It's a good little card before a crazy June.
Yeah, it's a good little fix. You know what I mean? It's not the big fix just yet, right? It's just kind of like that pregame, But honestly, like you said, main event was absolutely spectacular, And then she's saying if we have any YouTube, just follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Follow us on Fight Bananas. Find that, and then I'm under Jonathan MMA. You got Wake and Blake here. King Brian doesn't really put his Twitter handle anywhere, but you can find a lot of his content over on the Basement Sports, so make sure you go and shout out to those boys over there on the Basement Sports as well. But yeah, as well with that, Blake, final thoughts, man.
I have one final thought and one shout out. So I'm gonna do the shout out real quick. I am actually on the road. That's why you don't see me in my normal background right now. I'm in this beautiful hotel room in Dallas, Texas. And while I have been down here, I have found a really good beer that I wanted to give a shout out to for a particular reason. So, Deep Ellum IPA. It's from Deep Ellum Brewing. If you can see it right there, I know there's a little glare, but Deep Ellum Brewing is a local Dallas beer here in Kansas. I'm sorry, here in Dallas, Texas, and they got bought out, and they're going. I believe their brick and mortar is going out of business, but they're still going to sell their beers. So for anybody that enjoys a good brew, anybody that loves slamming down some beers, or anybody that enjoys a nice little IPA action every once in a while, go check out Deep Ellum Brewing in Dallas, Texas. Buy it up as much as you can because they are going to go out of business, at least as the brick and mortar. So I wanted to give them a shout out. No, they are not a paid sponsor. I've just enjoyed it while I've been here. I heard about the news that they're struggling as a company, but their beer is fucking fantastic, man. So I wanted to just go ahead and give a local Dallas shout out there. As for the fights, I thought the card, we've already talked about it. I gave it a 7.1 only based on 2 fights. I'm excited for these fighters to see kind of where everybody positions next and where everybody's jockeying for spots as the fight year continues. I have loved 2024 so far as the UFC roster is concerned. We've had some awesome fights. We've had some shockers. We've had some just out of left field stuff happen. In a month from now, we have Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler, which I cannot wait for. Brian, I hope you can join us for that. John, I know you'll be here for that. So you and me are going to be riding shotgun like goddamn Han Solo and Chewbacca, baby. So we're going to be having a good time. But yeah, man, just shout out to the Fight Bananas fans. Thank you so much. Queen in the comments, thank you guys so much for commenting and watching. I know you're the only one up right now. John is 237 where he's at right now, so I know his ass is tired as hell, even though he doesn't look it. The most beautiful face in the fight game, I'll tell you that right now. But yeah, thought the fight was great. Everybody, thank you so much for watching, and thanks for the Fight Bananas fans.
Absolutely. And if you guys aren't already, make sure you guys, like and subscribe, all the good jazz with that. We appreciate you. And like Blake said, Queen, thank you for the comments. Always nice just having someone else join in the conversation as well. So appreciate you joining us. But yeah, like you said, we're going to keep you guys locked in right here. All the post-fight shows, that we're going to keep it coming right here with Fight Bananas. So outside of that, we appreciate everybody that joining. But outside of that, we'll catch you guys after the next fight.